Welcome, everybody, to the Weekly Grind Podcast. I am your host, Keith Fabbri, with my co-host tonight, Doctortoddlee. Todd, how are we doing?
Fantastic.
All right. Kerry can't be with us again tonight. He's, for those that don't know, Kerry works in a automotive supplier, and they have what's known as TS audits that come through, and they get audited by the big three all the time, so he's still at work, and it's 8:15 at night. He's been there probably since 7 o'clock this morning, dealing with the big three.
Kerry's like the well-adjusted one of us.
Yes.
So he's got a real job.
I have two real jobs.
Well, he wears a shirt and tie.
He does wear a shirt and tie.
I tried a shirt and tie job. I did not fit in with other shirt and tie humans.
Right.
I look the part. I can't fake the part.
We're going to have Devin Blackmore on tonight. Devin had a conflict, so we're changing the show up. Instead of doing Devin's off season and talking about that, we are going to do the follow-up to Anabolic U episode 2. So
we can never talk about drugs enough.
We cannot ever talk about drugs enough. So last week we talked about testosterone, we talked about amplifiers, we talked about using orals as amplifiers, and I think we touched on EQ, we touched on nandrolone, both in the decanate and in the phenylpropionate form. What we did not touch on was, not very much anyway, was AIs, which are very, very important to use, anti-aromatase inhibitors. We didn't talk. Well, we talked about using Thor's hammer and the Toddlee MD test booster in place of a lot of the AIs and stuff. For those that want to run AIs, they want to run Arimidex or Aromacin or Novadex underneath their cycle. We'll talk about that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tell you how to go off cycle on a PCT and use those chemicals as PCTs. We get done with that, we'll talk a little bit about weight loss drugs such as T3, clenbuterol, and albuterol, and the differences in how to use them. So let's go ahead, Todd, and let's talk about anti-aromatase AIs used as underneath your cycle of gear, and what your preferences are and what your protocols usually are.
All right, first and foremost, for those of you who did not listen to episode 6, Anabolic University 1, do so. This will not make sense otherwise.
Not at all.
For those of you who are ridiculously stubborn and or lazy, what we're going to talk about is based on my biochemistry degree, not my medical doctorate, that endocrinologist, which is the subfield of Western medicine pertaining to hormones, have no training in this whatsoever. So
Zero clue.
That degree doesn't mean shit when it comes to this subject. Even though the fuckers prescribe it, they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
We know more.
So, yes, that honest to true, the bodybuilder that isn't covered with pimples and has kids knows more about endocrinology than every motherfucking endocrinologist who looks like dog shit. All right, and so that being said, the best PCT is a good OCT. Kind of like the best offense is a good defense. If they can't score on you, you don't have to do shit. You have to get like one field goal. Fuckers, you lose.
Right.
So it's like, if you don't have to run some fancy pants post-cycle therapy, if you didn't shut your shit off in the first place.
True.
Todd, what do you mean shut your shit off? It's like, all right, so you've got something called the HPTA axis, hypothalamic, pituitary, testicle axis. So, as we discussed last time, for those of you too stubborn to go back and listen, that the pituitary is signaled by gonadotropin-releasing hormone. It's okay, you won't be tested on this later. But your balls won't work, so it's worse. And it's like the pituitary then releases luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone then migrates to the bloodstream, hence an endocrine hormone.
Yes.
To the testes. The testes then convert cholesterol, which is transported by L-carnitine, or is it vitamin D? It's vitamin D, which is then converted to testosterone. Now, here's the problem. The aromatase enzyme, the purpose of this discussion, converts testosterone back into estrogen. Estrogen then inhibits the function of gonadotropin-releasing hormone on the pituitary. So what am I saying? You're like, this is really fucking confusing. What I'm saying is estrogen shuts off your body's production of testosterone. So when you inject anabolic steroids or testosterone that are called wet because they convert to estrogen, it's going to shut your shit off.
Right.
You could even trademark that, because a lot of people say, oh man, my shit shut off. It's like, you don't want your shit shutting off.
Yep.
One, because without natural testosterone, for some reason, your dick doesn't work. Now, some people find a way around this with like a lot of Masteron or Proviron, assuming the DHT is what causes erections, but there's more to it than that, and you really need a balance of estrogen, testosterone, and DHT. You need natural test production of some degree or another. Furthermore, FSH is the twin sister of LH, and that's what stimulates the Sertoli cells to produce sperm. So you can't get women pregnant if your shit shut off.
Right.
Also, your balls shrink, and a lot of women care about ball size. They just don't talk about it. So the point is, no testicle left behind.
Right. So anyway, we'll just in layman's terms, as you're injecting anabolic steroids, you're putting testosterone derivatives into your system, which is increasing your testosterone levels within your bloodstream, meaning your body doesn't need to produce anymore because it's only basically set to a set point to carry so much. So if it doesn't need to make it, it's not going to make it.
Very good point. That the reason why it shuts its shit off is because an excess of anything isn't necessarily a good thing.
Right.
The body likes to be on the tip of think of like a traffic cone and balancing a plate on it. And if you put too much food on one end of the plate or the other, the plate's going to fall tip, and some of the food's going to fall off the plate, and then it's going to level out.
Right.
Your body does that with everything in the endocrine system. Everything's a balancing act, whether it's GH versus insulin, testosterone versus estrogen. So the masculine features that you're looking for, like hardness, like your nipples point up, you're strong, you're vascular, you're shredded, you don't whine like a bitch, you don't cry constantly, that comes from having a high testosterone to estrogen ratio. So that's where aromatase inhibitors come in. You want to inhibit aromatase with an aromatase inhibitor. So the ones that you can use that are prescription strength designed for breast cancer is from order of most badass to least badass, letrozole, which is strong as fuck. It destroys 99.9% of the aromatase enzyme. And I say destroy meaning competitively inhibit. What it does is it's a non-steroidal competitive inhibitor. It doesn't look like a steroid molecule. It isn't a cholesterol-based hormone. It's kind of like a bear trap that sticks something out so that the aromatase enzyme grabs a hold of what it thinks is a steroid, and the bear trap slaps around it and then shuts it down.
Yep.
Now, it's good for about 3.5 days half-life. This is to be contrasted with a suicide inhibitor. Suicide inhibitors bind to the enzyme aromatase and kill it dead. Aromacin, also known as extemosane, is a 65% effective suicide inhibitor. So using them in conjunction with each other, a lot of people think aromacin's the best one. It's not. It's the first one that was developed. It's terrible to use in women with breast cancer if they're not postmenopausal, because you don't want to fuck them up so bad they can never have kids.
Right.
You just want to keep them from dying from breast cancer. So you want to be able to pull back on it. You don't want to just burn it to the ground. So with a man, we don't really give a fuck because we have no use for estrogen whatsoever except for HDL production in the liver, which we'll get to with the SERMs, how tamoxifen actually stimulates HDL production in the liver. So one of the one benefits of a SERM is for just HDL production if you shut your shit off with the aromatase inhibitors. So letrozole is super strong. Now what they found is if you shut off all of a male rat's estrogen, you won't mount female rats. That doesn't mean that you won't have sex with women. It's just saying that people assume, based on that study, that estrogen is necessary for having sex.
Well, it's necessary for the overall sex drive. I mean, I've used letrozole, and basically I could give a fuck less. It just basically shuts the estrogen conversion off completely to the point where I'm just like, don't care.
And it's like you just don't give. There's no cuddles here.
Right.
It's a cuddle-free zone. That you just don't have any fucks given for anything anymore. You're just a robot made out of flesh and bone rather than silicone and iron.
Right.
Now we get to the next step down, which is Arimidex.
Yep.
Arimidex is 97% effective. And this is, what they found was that using 2.5 milligrams of letrozole every day was so overkill that it hurt testosterone production. But 1.25 milligrams of letrozole every 3 days caused an increase in testosterone production by up to 4-fold. So letrozole in moderate doses can be very effective.
Right.
And a correlation of that would be Arimidex, which comes in a 1 milligram pill. A lot of HRT doctors prescribe a 0.5 milligram of Arimidex every other day, and they usually have you do 200 milligrams a sip a week. And that's a pretty decent balance. For every 200 milligrams of sip, you would use maybe 1 to 1.5 milligrams of Arimidex.
Right.
Now, the next step down would be Aromacin, which is 65% suppression, but it's suicide inhibitor, so it's permanent.
Yep.
Now, what I did is with Thor's hammer, I put in 7,8-benzo, which is a 50% suicide inhibitor. And then I also put in 3,5-androsta, which is a competitive steroidal non-suicide inhibitor, which knocks out about 50% too.
Yep.
So together, those two in combination gives you a short-term effect of 75% suppression of aromatase and a long-term effect of 50% suppression of aromatase.
Right.
That's just to compare the most powerful stuff you can get over the counter in combination versus how strong the breast cancer meds are. Now, so prescription strength's always going to be stronger, but if you don't have a good hookup, there's always the Thor's hammer option.
What about Novadex?
Okay, so now we're going to talk about SERMs.
Yep.
SERM is selective estrogen receptor modulator. So the best way to put it is a lot of people don't understand enzyme chemistry. An enzyme binds a ligand or an agonist, it stimulates the effect.
Yep.
If they bind antagonist ligand, it has a negative effect. Then there's a neutral where it just blanks it. So a SERM can do a multitude of things, whereas estrogen stimulates the estrogen alpha and estrogen beta receptor, which does have a positive function in muscle growth. That's one of the reasons why DECA grows muscle so well. That's why TEST grows muscle so well, is the estrogen alpha receptor works like MGF, and the estrogen beta receptor works like IGF.
Right.
So it's functional for growing the muscle cells for hyperplasia and hypertrophy. However, if you're cutting, you don't give a fuck because you're not going to grow. So that's where SERMs can be handy in that if you already have a breast mass, a SERM, like tamoxifen, that's my favorite one, can shrink. It's also called Novadex. It's name. That can shrink the tumor. So you would use, if your nipples are painful, you would use an AI, like Letro, to stop the pain and tenderness. We want to clear up the estrogen from being produced. Then you want to bind to the estrogen receptive tissues, like the breast mass you just grew, and crush it, shrivel it up, and dry it out by binding to its estrogen receptors and sending a negative signal, which has a double effect that not only by you pushing the brakes, you inhibit the estrogen that's still left from pushing the gas. Other things to throw in with a mix like this is proviron, because it binds to the SHBG, which acts as a reservoir for your estrogen. That's why a lot of people feel that Anadrol and stuff like that have this bizarre effect where it's going to cause an increase in gyno. Well, it's really complicated. What it does is, since it's a DHT molecule, it preferentially binds to SHBG, which bumps off estrogen, increasing your free estrogen pool. Then a lot of people eat dirty when they're bulking, and since Anadrol is a bulking drug, now since they have a higher fat intake, their aromatase enzymes go up.
Yep.
So eating a high-fat diet increases your aromatase enzymes.
They put on more fat is what they do.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's not gyno, it's just fat is what it is.
Yeah. And then, well, the thing is as your estrogen goes up, it deposits the fat into the breast.
Right.
Back of the arms and the legs and butt. Whereas if your estrogen is really low and you have an increase in body fat, it all goes into the visceral organs behind the abs, like the omentum and around your heart, kidneys, and liver. That's why you'll see dudes with like a ripped gut, but it's a gut.
It's turtle shell gut is what it is.
It's like the bodybuilders who look like they're pregnant cavemen, is that they have diabetes and be from using so much insulin and GH in the off season that they have this mountain of visceral fat inside their abdomen. Then they go on these crash diets with just a GH and no insulin. They burn the fat from the subcutaneous subcutaneous tissue, but they don't burn the visceral fat, just the subcutaneous fat.
Right.
And then this is repeated year after year, competition season after competition season, and they just get more and more of the fat gut, where the fat is behind the abdominal wall,
right,
crushing the organs, killing them dead.
Yep.
So that's where insulin sensitivity protects against this to some degree.
Yes.
So we were on SERMs. So one of the advantages of tamoxifen is that it positively enhances the liver's production of HDL. Now, HDL is the good cholesterol that clears up the bad cholesterol, LDL. If you had some magical diet and didn't ever have inflammation, you wouldn't have scarring of your blood vessels, and you wouldn't have LDL trying to clean up the mess, getting stuck in there and causing foam cells, and then having blood clots over those foam cells, causing a thrombus, which would eventually break off and cause an embolus to your lungs or a stroke or a heart attack.
Right.
But the HDL comes along and cleans that up. HDL is your good cholesterol. Now, some people believe that the number goes down when your androgen load's high, but the size of the HDL particle increases, so your total amount of actual HDL is the same. So there's an additional test you have to do, and unfortunately, it escapes my mind at the moment what that is called. But there is a way of testing the size of the HDL particles. Right. And if the total amount times the size equals the same, it doesn't really matter. Nonetheless, using tamoxifen, even 5 milligrams a day, should benefit your HDL and should help keep estrogen from binding where you don't want it to bind.
That is my favorite one, is using Novadex, especially in a contest prep. The last 4 weeks, adding, I'll use Arimidex coming in, and then adding to the Arimidex, adding tamoxifen at 20 milligrams. I feel better. Everything, looks better. I dry out even more and stuff. And then coming out of the show, everything's a lot better. So that is one of my personal favorites, is to run Novadex or tamoxifen at the end of the prep.
Okay. I'm always afraid of using 20 because there's a point at which, instead of an inhibitory effect, it is a stimulatory effect.
Right.
I always try to err on the side of 5 to 10 or 10 twice a day, even though it's got a 3-day half-life. For some reason,
that's what I was doing. I was doing 10 twice a day, 10 in the morning and then 10 mid-afternoon.
It doesn't make any sense to me, but for some reason, I heard it somewhere and I made the switch, and it really made a difference.
You did. Yeah, it works. Rather than just doing 20 first thing in the morning. Yeah, for whatever reason, it's got a 3-day half-life, but for some reason, the effects start to wear off when you're just doing a small amount like that, as opposed to a bigger amount. It tends to wear off a lot quicker, but if you're doing it in 2 amounts of the same amount, and you're splitting the doses up, it's kind of like Anavar, where if you just take Anavar, you take all your Anavar first thing in the morning, it's not as effective into the next day. But if you split your Anavar doses up, you're getting more effect from it. So it worked for me that way too.
Especially for ladies.
Well, yeah, I'm just talking for men, because we can take Anavar and not have any issues.
Right, and it's like, to me, okay, comparing Anavar to other DHTs, it's a hard business, because they all, even though on paper they shouldn't be different, they are.
They are.
So Anavar's most like, to me, Proviron is that it's a super safe option, but it's a lot stronger at a lower milligram.
Yep.
And then Anadrol is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where it's strong as fuck.
I love Anadrol. That's my favorite. I'm sorry. That's my favorite one.
And you know what? I don't really, my dad had an Irish liver, so I don't really worry so much about liver problems.
Right.
I think if any organ that's going to make it into the next millennia, if you carbon freeze dried me and then nuclear holocaust of the earth,
it'd be your liver.
You could know Todd from his liver if you had problems.
All right. What about Clomid?
Clomid. Oh, all right. So Clomid still stimulates LH release, whereas tamoxifen is better. Clomid does work. Clomid's like the redheaded stepchild of tamoxifen. Right. What it was when a pharmaceutical company comes out with some awesome new drug, every other pharmaceutical company tries to come out with a different version of the drug.
Yes.
In order for it to get FDA approved to treat a disease, they have to either have some functional difference. Either it's better for this, not as good for that. has a better half-life, has a different half-life. A good example is Viagra. Viagra was selling like crazy, so Levitra and Cialis had to come out, but they had to be different or better, so they have different half-life.
Right.
So instead of having a 3-hour effective window for boners with Viagra, but it turns your vision
36
yellow.
hours
Cialis
for
has
Cialis.
a 36 hours, and your vision is the same, but
Right.
you have extreme sinus pressure.
Right.
So it's like, what's more important, blowing snot bubbles on your girl or seeing everyone as a blonde? You know, it's like, that's your dick pill for you.
Right.
So that being said, because women are so important and men don't mean a fucking thing, that 1 out of 8 women get breast cancer. It's the worst thing that ever fucking happened. But 100% of men get prostate cancer. No one gives a fuck. That everyone's scrambling to come up with different types of breast cancer meds. So the different breast cancer meds, that tamoxifen came out first, but tamoxifen was causing uterine cancer.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because you're stimulating one estrogen receptor while you're inhibiting another.
Right.
Raloxifene was released and did something different. It could prevent breast cancer, but doesn't stimulate uterine cancer. So they came out with Clomid, and Clomid sucks ass. So it was so crappy that they were like, well, we'll give it to men for infertility. And it worked.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as good as tamoxifen, doesn't work as good as raloxifene, but at least it works on men for that. So rather than having on-label use of tamoxifen for infertility for men, they use Clomid. Now, rather than anyone being honest and using the correct drug, the most effective drug, they just use the one that says on-label because it protects them from lawsuits. Every time you try to use a drug off-label, there's a chance the insurance company won't cover it, and you open yourself up for a class action lawsuit. If in 10 years, all these babies are born with flippers, then a lawyer can sue you and get all these flipper-handed baby parents to come at you for billions of dollars in damages. So doctors want to cover their ass first, second, and third. And in fact, our ethics teacher in medical school was OJ's golfing partner. And he taught us that 1, don't get sued, 2, don't get sued, 3, don't get sued, 4, help someone if it's convenient to you.
Right.
I'm not fucking kidding. It's that evil.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, that's what Clomid is. Clomid is the drug that causes blindness. But because of legal commercialized bullshit is what's still prescribed for male infertility because men don't mean a fucking thing in our culture.
Right.
Rather than using the correct drug, which is tamoxifen.
Right.
However, I do have to say that we have 2 cases of dads getting their wives pregnant using Thor's hammer when they went instead of Clomid.
Right.
But Clomid was failing treatment. I said, try Thor's hammer. That's what I made it for. And it actually worked. I was pretty excited about that.
There you go.
So
Good job. So now it's a pregnancy stimulator as well.
Yeah. I knock your bitch up. I'm Doctortoddlee.
All right. So now if we're using those, we're talking about using those under your cycle. And obviously you said your best PCT is using
on cycle therapy.
Right, using OTC. What about going PCT? If say we want to continue to use, what in your opinion are the 2 top compounds to use as a PCT, or are they conjunction together?
So I made Thor's hammer to be the best OCT and the best post-cycle therapy, but I'm biased. So let's say Thor's hammer doesn't exist. I would say you want to control estrogen production when you go off your androgen.
Right.
So immediately, they say, I believe it is triptorelin or tesmorelin is 100 milligrams, is a huge stimulant of GnRH, or gonadotropin releasing hormone.
Right.
And that's superior to HCG. And the reason is HCG is kind of a bastardized version of LH. And if you use HCG, you're inhibiting LH's function, which is why with the Thor's hammer, I packaged a Toddlee test booster, which is really sodium D-aspartate, the effective version of DAA.
Yep.
Because that's supposed to work better than HCG. It stimulates the testes and it stimulates the brain to release LH, whereas with HCG, it stimulates the testes but it inhibits the brain releasing LH. That's why I chose to do it that way.
Okay.
And now the HCG, you could use that, but if you look at the insert, there's 7 different protocols. So even the people who fucking make it don't know how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, and there's a lot of story. I mean, some people will say, oh, you need 5,000 milligrams a week. Some people say 2,500. Some say 1,250 a week. Some say 5,000 a week for fucking 4 weeks. Some people say 1,250 a week for 4 weeks, for 6 weeks. It's just literally nobody knows how to use this shit. It's just basically pissing in the wind.
I've never met an endocrinologist that knew what the fuck he was doing.
They're just pissing in the wind.
Everybody who comes to me says, I went to my doctor and they fucked me up so bad. Yep. Like to the tune of every day for years now, I have to hear about how some doctor fucked people up. There's some guy in Birmingham who charges people $900 every 3 months to be part of his group. And all he does is just butcher the fuck out of them. The only people that I think have any idea what they're doing is LifeXMD. That's it. Everybody that goes to them is pretty satisfied with the result.
Right.
But they don't try to get people off. You know, they're too smart for that. You don't.
No, they're not making any money that way.
Well, it's like this. Let's say you turn into a vampire. When in the movie does the vampire ever turn back into a human?
Right.
You don't. How many X-Men lose their mutagenic factors? They don't. No. How often do any superheroes go from being a superhero to a regular Joe again? By choice. They don't. What do these people want to do? They want to go off, then back on. That's fucking retarded. Why would you give up your superpowers and then try to get them back later? It's just a lot of work for no reason. It's wishy-washy nonsense.
Right.
So the HCG is not going to work. It's too confusing. Tesnorelin or tripto, I get the two confused. That's supposed to stimulate it. Then you wait about 10 to 20 days, and then you start with letrozole or Arimidex at a relatively high dose, usually about 1 milligram a day, and then you throw under that 20 milligrams of tamoxifen, which is also Novadex. And that's supposed to basically inhibit the fuck out of estrogen, so there's nobody hitting the brake pedal on your pituitary. The theory is you've already stimulated the pituitary, now no one's hitting the brake pedal. Right. If you were to use sodium D-aspartate, then that would stimulate the pituitary, which is why even if somebody was going to use Thor's hammer, I still suggest you might want to throw in some letrozole or Arimidex along with some Novadex 20 to 30 days afterward. Now, that's assuming somebody was using a long-acting ester like an Aphate or Cypionate and just stopped, which is dumb. You'd want to switch to a short-acting like Prope and pull off. Then after 3 or 4 days, you might be ready to actually stimulate it. You got to calculate out how long of a tail is or half-life is your ester for testosterone or other drugs going to be. Double that, and then that's when you would estimate to start your triptorelin dose. So if it's DECA, it's like 20 days. If it's an Aphate, it's 14 days.
Right. Yeah, I've always, if I'm coming off of slow esters, which I haven't done that in a long time, I'm coming off of a slow ester, I've always personally or told people, wait at least a week. And then usually I have them do Arimidex and tamoxifen in conjunction with one other. 1 milligram of Arimidex every other day, and then 10 to 20 milligrams of tamoxifen every day. And usually carry that through for at least 3 to 4 weeks, and then you're off, and then you're ready to dry out so you can start again. If it was a fast acting one, then they can start it within 2 days, because if they came off a propionate or if they came off of a contest prep or something, they were already running Novadex or something at the end, just continue to run it all the way through, and then add Arimidex in if you haven't already had it in there. But yeah, if they're running slow esters and coming off, if they're running like Cypionate, or if they're running Sustanon, it's going to take at least 2 to 3 weeks for their levels to come back down. There's no reason to start that right away.
Right, because you're not going to,
you're not going to see any results from it.
You don't want uncontrolled, you have to gauge it right. But the point is, you don't try to stimulate the GnRH until after the tail's gone. You could probably start the anti-estrogen brigade immediately if you're running a bunch of dry shit. What a lot of people do is they try to bridge with a little bit of Anavar or a little bit of Proviron for that 2-week period where they're not injecting, but they're not taking a PCT yet.
Right. All right. Well, that's that answered all of my questions on that. We'll take a little break here. Hear from musclementor.net, and we'll come back and we'll start talking T3, clenbuterol, and albuterol, and anything else that we want to talk about, because we fucking can.
That guy's a genius.
Have you ever wished there was a site devoted to providing true information about bodybuilding? One that shows you what the top bodybuilders are really doing? It's all here at musclementor.net. Nutrition, training, supplements, super supplements, contest prep, final week prep, and everything in between. There's training logs, diet logs, scientific articles, and hours of video footage covering every detail involved with building muscle and losing body fat. Brought to you by prep gurus Justin Harris and Brad Hall, all for only $9.99 a month. That's right, musclementor.net. Let's get freaky.
And we are back. And we talked a little bit in the first segment there, Todd, about AIs and SERMs. And the next segment, we're going to talk about, we're going to start with T3 and T4. And we'll talk about the usage of the two of them, how they're supposed to use them, which one's better, when you should actually fucking use them, because people don't even understand when they should actually use them. They just use them. So, T3, what is it?
All right, so let's back this up a little bit. What's a thyroid? A thyroid is a gland located in your neck. What's it do? It produces thyroid hormone. What's thyroid hormone? It comes in two varieties, T4 and T3. Aren't those movies? Yes, they are. But that's not the topic here. So the number is based off of how many iodines are bound to the molecule.
Yep.
If it's T4, it's inactive state. T3 is the active state. So in your body, the half-life of T4 is long as fuck. T3 is short as fuck. So it has a pool, a reservoir of T4. And as the T3 is being used up, the body detects that, hey, we're missing some T3. Let's cleave an iodine off of T4 to make some T3.
Yep.
Not that complicated, right?
Right.
Well, one, does your environment have iodine? If you live in Michigan, the answer is no. That's why we have the highest amount of fat people. Particularly women, for some reason, have a very hard time absorbing iodine out of their environment. So that's why sushi is so popular, is that the seaweed that they wrap the sushi in is the only source of iodine in Michigan. Now, some people are wiser, and they take kelp pills. Generally speaking, if they're that smart, they're not eating Oreos. It's not like they chase their kelp pills with some Oreos. But, so what happens is you hear all these bikini competitors are popping T3s like they're Skittles. And the problem is, you start to upregulate all this T3 intake. The thyroid gland no longer makes T4 if it was in the first place, even if you take a ton of iodine. So the T3, what's it do? It upregulates the speed of function of the mitochondria. So it speeds up the speed at which the mitochondria generates energy out of fuel sources, like fat and carbohydrates.
Right.
When carbohydrate fuels are low, the body starts cannibalizing skeletal muscle to make more carbohydrates, putting you in a negative nitrogen deficit.
Yes.
Since girls don't use Tren or Primo, at least let's hope they don't, they're going to lose muscle this way. So they're just going to get smaller, not leaner.
Right.
Likewise, if you don't supplement with some T4, you won't have a proper pool to back up. Now, one safe dose of T3 that seems to not piss off the body is 25 micrograms.
Right.
So what did the three worst coaches in Michigan give out?
100.
200.
Oh, I was shortchanging them on that one.
Yeah, it's 200. They ramp these poor girls up to 200 so that they can be these burnt out shells. And what they do, and that they throw like 200 girls at the trophy. And if one of them sticks, they advertise the fuck out of her. Saying, look at my client. She won a pro card. Yippee, skippy. Yeah. Now she still works at FedEx folding boxes.
Right, but the other
But you don't know
199
that.
are fucked because they fucked them up for life.
Well, but nonetheless, she's fucked for life, and she doesn't make a goddamn penny more as an IFBB Pro as she did before, because she still works at FedEx.
Right.
Period. If you give a girl enough drugs that they win one of these pro cards, they look like a Punch and Duty Apple doll. They're not going to win the modeling gigs.
Right.
So you can't win a pro card with drugs and expect to actually make money that way. But men somehow bounce back from the T3 because of the trend or the primo they're on or their GH. One of those three keeps them in a positive nitrogen balance.
Right.
Another thing that protects the muscle cell is mixing Clen with the T4. The clenbuterol sensitizes the white fibers to bind T4 molecules, and that protects them from the T3 molecules eating away at them.
Right.
So if you run a low enough T3 and you have Tren, Primo, GH, or clenbuterol on board, you should be okay. Some girls are like, well, does that mean I can run Clen and T3 and be okay? It's like, in theory. But if you're relying on drugs...
That's the problem, is that they end up relying on it. Right.
And it means that you weren't in shape to begin with.
Right.
It's not like you're getting inhumanly shredded and you're using a little bit of drugs to get yourself inhumanly shredded for a short period of time. Most of these girls are trying to get to a reasonably low body fat from a moderate or high body fat using drugs that men use in very small amounts for a very short amount of time.
Right.
Like clenbuterol is something you use for 2 weeks because you're sensitized.
Yep.
Or desensitized, rather, to
Maximum
it
of
after
4.
2 weeks.
Maximum of 4. And that's if you're cycling it.
And then it's just, and they're like, well, I'll take some Benadryl with it.
It doesn't work.
Explain to me the mechanism of action of how the fucking Benadryl helps. Well, that's what my coach said. Like, I don't give a fuck. Who's your coach? Dickweed? One of the bald pieces of shit who give every girl a ton of drugs? Fuck him. And then they're like, God, you're hostile. I'm like, well, you're getting a clip the size of Gibraltar. It's like that you don't trust these fuckers. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They don't have any degrees, and they don't have any fucking hair. How good could they be if they're fat and they have no hair? You know, and they clearly don't know their drugs if all their fucking hair fell out and they're in the U of M because their organs are shutting down every week. And they walk like they've got no ankles, like they've got 2 peg legs, like it's a pirate or something with a golfing hat. It's like, there's no point to this shit. Don't do a bunch of fucking drugs to get in shape. The only thing you can get away with is like 40 Clen for 2 weeks and 25 micrograms of T3.
Right.
It's so infinitesimally small, you're not going to lose more than a pound or 2 from it.
No.
You at that point that you're virtually on the brink of death, and then you use a little bit to make yourself look like Skeletor. That you're like got the shrink wrap skin around an apple doll's head. That if you're walking through the mall and people aren't throwing up in their mouth and kids aren't crying, you're not even ready to use those drugs.
Right.
You can still pass for human. You can't use those asthma drug and thyroid drugs to shave off the tiniest bit of remaining fat.
Right.
And then albuterol is a better choice for long term because albuterol has got a very short half-life, so it won't desensitize you to it.
Right.
You could take some albuterol in the morning before cardio. It'll help you with your cardio because it's a beta-2 agonist. It's going to bind to the lungs and help you with gas exchange. That means oxygen and CO2.
Right.
And it'll help you clear the blood out, deacidify it, help you supply the mitochondria with oxygen, and the T3 and the L-carnitine helps transport in fat and upregulates the speed in the case of the T3. And those 3 in conjunction will help you burn fat while you're doing cardio. But you would have to be in a carb-free state, and then you'd have to protect the muscle tissue, either by having, as you talked about, GH, Primo, or Tren on board.
Right. All right.
Also, if you use Winstrol, you inhibit cortisol from being released.
Right. Well, let's talk about we say with T3 and stuff, and we've touched on this now that for women it's just, I mean, it should be a very fucking last resort using the T3, and I think that was the main thing that I wanted to touch on was because I like you, I've seen way too many women that are using T3 for too long a time or period, and they don't need it. And Honestly, T3, I think the only time that a man should be using T3 is when they're using it in conjunction with growth hormone. Otherwise, there's really no reason to be using it at all. T4, the difference is there, but let's talk Clen. Let's talk a little bit more about clenbuterol, because you said for 2 weeks, and I think people really need to understand that it is a beta 2 agonist, and that it literally desensitizes and doesn't work. And when you said 2 weeks, you're right. It's 2 weeks. I mean, your maximum of 2 weeks it is actually going to be effective in the system, and that's at like 20 micrograms. You don't even have to do that much, but you see people running 100, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Because it's not doing you any good. All you're doing is stimulating yourself, and you're walking around like you're in fucking crack and shaking and shivering all over the place.
It's not 100% specific for beta 2. So once you've, what do you call it, saturated your beta 2 receptors.
That's what I was looking for, saturated.
And it causes heart contraction and heart speed strain, so that your blood pressure goes through the fucking roof.
Right.
And you get anxious. You know, what do they give snipers so they can kill without shaking? Beta blockers.
Yep.
So why would you jack the fuck out of your beta receptors? You could be a twitchy, anxious shit all the time and miserable to be around and not get any sleep, so you're cranky motherfucker all day, because tren doesn't take your sleep away enough. Right. So it's like you want to wait until you're desensitized to your 40 micrograms of clen before you up it to 80. But you shouldn't have been on it for so fucking long, you're desensitized anyway.
Right.
But then you weren't in shape and you didn't belong on stage. You know? It's like the goal is not to be a leather purse that's empty.
Right. Well, the thing is that they start running clenbuterol right off the bat in the beginning of their prep, and then they keep carrying it on. They're like, well, it's just not working anymore, so I increased it. Well, yeah, it's not working anymore because you've saturated the fucking receptor so bad it's not going to work. The only way that you can get it to work at all is if you were to increase the dose. But even at that point, it's so saturated that even increasing the dose isn't doing anything for you. All you're doing is stimulating your body, literally, so that your adrenal gland is completely fucking shot, and now you have to have that clenbuterol in you, or all you're fucking falling asleep and not able to function. And then on the top of it all, you end up giving yourself fucking asthma, because your body becomes hooked on the actual chemical itself, and it needs it in order to move oxygen properly. So you end up with fucking asthma. So you just gave yourself asthma. Congratulations.
Wait and see how fat you get now after your show.
Exactly.
Margaritas, ice cream, and asthma. Great combination.
Right.
Look at the full-on beta blockers and how fat they get.
Yeah.
So taking a beta blocker is the same thing as getting addicted to clen and taking the clen away.
Right. Yeah, if you're running clenbuterol, honestly, the only time, even this is men too, you should run clenbuterol is when you get about 4 weeks out of the show. You want to start looking at using clen? Okay, that's the time to use it. And you can cycle it. I've had success cycling it for like 3 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off. But that's no more than that.
36-hour half-life, so that's still dicey, but that keeps it from ramping up.
But we're sitting at like 40 micrograms at the most. I don't even increase it. It's just 3 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off. And by the time you get down to the last week, you're not needing it anyway, because why the fuck would you use clenbuterol when you're trying to load carbohydrates? Yeah, so there's no reason in using it that last week, because I might have 2 or 3 days where my calories are going to be, my carbohydrates are going to be a little bit lower, but I don't need the clenbuterol for that. I'm already reducing calories and stuff anyway that last week, as I start to, prime my body for that carb load, so we can just kick them right on out to begin with. I don't need it at that last week. So if you start 4 weeks out and you run 3 weeks of 3 days on, 2 days off, you're going to be about where you need to be, and you won't need to increase dose. Or you can just go 2 weeks, start at 3 weeks out and run 2 weeks at fucking 40 straight. And by the time you get to the end of the 2 weeks, you will be desensitized, and it will not have any effect on you anymore. But you won't have asthma.
Right. You just stay on it. Then your show go down to 20.
Right. But you won't have fucking asthma, which is the key, is that when you get done with the show, you won't have fucking asthma.
Right. Just or use albuterol. And then it's simpler. 1 milligram albuterol pre-lift with 1,000 milligrams of, and not pre-lift. I'm sorry, you'll be pre-cardio.
Pre-cardio in a fasted state.
You know, like fasted cardio is an art. The purpose is to take advantage of the fact that there's no carbohydrates in your body. So you want to upregulate everything that's going to utilize growth hormone release and fat fuel usage. You're basically doing a perfect keto state. So you have to push the ketosis envelope, nail the fuck out of it with like MCT oil to activate ketone production and a gazillion other minor tiny things. And if you don't do that shit right, no fucking cardio. You're better off in your cardio and after your lift.
Right.
So if you're not an engineer, ninja, and a sniper all in one, you're not going to pull it off right. And fasted cardio is probably more harmful than time.
Right. Well, that's the point with doing the fasted cardio after you've had enough time for blood sugar levels to come down to a rested state, and even in to where you are pushing 80 nanograms of fucking blood glucose levels and stuff, or even below that, so that when you do actually do the cardio, you are tapping into first probably your liver stores, and then into body fat, because there's no blood sugar available at the time going through your actual bloodstream. So you're not using any kind of glucose that's stored in the bloodstream. You're gonna have to pull it out of the adipocytes in order to actually burn energy. But the problem is with people doing that is that they don't understand is that the night before they fucking binge on ice cream and fucking Twizzlers for their last meal. And they get up in the morning and their fucking blood sugar levels are still kind of on the high side, and then they go do fucking fasted cardio, but they're really not fasted, they're just starved.
Right. So the point is the GH will protect the muscles.
Yep.
If you're running anabolics, a DHT-based oral like Anavar would be a good idea. Not that I condone it for women, but they're going to do it anyway. 5 milligrams for women, probably
5 milligrams.
And then that's when you use 40 milligrams of Clen, 1,000 milligrams of L-carnitine, some yohimbine. And that point is the beta-2 binds to the lungs and the fat cells. The yohimbine binds to the alpha-2 receptors and unlocks the fat cells. The estrogen lockdown while you were sleeping. The GH binds to the fat cells so nothing gets stored in the fat, binds to the muscle cells so things get upregulated. It also binds to the liver and upregulates IGF-1 production, which does very similar things. And then the cortisol is inhibited by the winstrol, or the cortisol receptors blocked by the Anavar. And all of these, and then the MCT oil will then activate the liver to make ketones. And in that state of perfection, you will motherfucker. That's when DNP would be useful. And the only time DNP would be useful is if you've got a ship, all fucking bells and whistles. You got your tractor beam, you got your ion cannon, you got your shields up, everything on your spaceship's fucking perfect.
Right.
That's when a little T will, T3 speeds up the mitochondria. L-carnitine transports the fat from the fat cell into the mitochondria that you liberated with the beta-2 and alpha-2 agonist. The point is that a DNP and T2, that's T2. Don't worry about T2. DNP and T2 will punch holes in the side of the mitochondria. You're leaking protons, so it's inefficient. So you're speeding up how fast it works, and then you make it so it burns way more fat to get out the energy.
Right.
And it leaks at its heat. And if you're pissed, your eyes turn yellow, you took too much DNP.
Right.
It builds up in your system.
Oh, it does, and people don't understand it, just how shitty they feel when they take it. I've seen people take it before, and it's like they can't even fucking train because they feel like such dog shit, because you've literally, you're putting a toxin in your fucking body. You're killing yourself very, very slowly or very fast, depending on how much you're taking.
Yeah. It is fucking crazy. Sweating, dude. I remember once in 2008, I lay down so many towels over the course of the night that when I woke up I would just lay the towels down and wake up to pee, peel off a towel that's soaked, throw it on the floor, pee, go back and lay back down, soak through that towel, but every night I went through 8.
Oh, I do that anyway with Tren. I get trend sweats at like fucking 6 weeks out. When I do the same thing, I'll wake up once every 2 hours and I'll have to pull my towel off the fucking bed that's completely soaked, hang it over the fucking rail or something by the bed, put a new towel down, lay back down, go back to sleep so that I can wake up again in an hour or two and peel that fucking towel back off and hope the other one's dry so I don't have to go downstairs and get another one.
This was before I ever met a bodybuilder. This is in like med school. My buddy who I went to high school with, college, med school, he's in med school with me, and he's like, this stuff is uncoupling agent, DNP. This would be great for diet since you just burn fat constantly. So he made some in his house, and like he did the calculations, and we made it. We had no idea what the fuck it was, or that anyone else ever figured this out before. Let alone that it was banned in the 1920s because it was causing housewives to go blind.
Right.
Zero. So I fucking used it. I got from 170, I think, to 138 pounds in 2 months.
Jesus.
And I just fucking torched it. I was doing OBGYN, and it's like I sweat my fucking ass off. Like, oh my God. It was crazy. I was almost as cranky as all the pregnant doctors. Everybody who goes into OBGYN just gets knocked up right away. It's like a bunch of pregnant nurses and pregnant patients. Everyone hates you because you're a man. It's crazy. It's like being, what do you call it, an OSS in an SS camp in 1944. It's crazy how you're so behind enemy lines and everyone wants you dead. But yeah, so it was like I was yellow. It was like yellow all the time. And I was practically shaking too. And everyone's like, I think you have a thyroid disorder for the amount you sweat. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. Because nobody had met you before, but you came into the service running DNP. You left the service. You're just a sweating guy.
Right.
But yeah, it's crazy how fucking strong that shit is. But, case in point, to this day, 10 years later, I can't eat less than 3,000 calories a day or I lose weight.
Right.
I didn't even use it to compete with. I just used it just to get in shape for February. Like, it didn't make sense. I'm like, it's cold as fuck. I'm going to take the DNP so I don't have to wear a jacket outside. You know, like, that's how I thought of it. I was like, I'll scare the fuck out of people. Right. I'll walk around in a T-shirt in the middle of fucking February.
Yeah.
Negative 38, and people are putting their hands on me like homeless people do to a sterno just to get heated up.
Jesus Christ.
Like a dog turd.
And that's the thing, though, that people don't understand with that, the permanent use of DMP and stuff, how permanent that shit is. You don't come back from that. Like you said, you can't eat less than 3,000 calories or you lose fucking weight. So, and that's before fucking training. That's before training. So now because you're training and you're burning calories, you need to eat even fucking more. That's...
Yeah, I just got the Arnold Bible that month. That was the first one of Bible. And I was trying Arnold's basic training, like breaking my back, trying to do good mornings and fucking clean what the fuck I'm doing. And I was training like 4.5 hours a day. It was fucking brutal.
Right.
Sleep, 12 hours of work, 4.5 hours of training.
Jesus.
And then there's eating food.
And then you got to eat food. And at that point, you probably got to eat 6,000 calories to maintain. Yeah,
I'd never dieted yet. Or like I never used creatine or never used protein powder. I was 16, started with DNP.
Wow.
Like, I know, right? Yeah. There's an analogy to see for this radio show.
Like we said last week we said, kids, don't use Halo. This week I'm going to say, kids, don't use DNP.
No. DNP.
There's your PSA. There's your PSA right there. Kids, don't use DNP because it'll fuck you up. No. I've never used it. I've never used it, and I don't plan on using it. I read up on it and stuff and read all the studies and shit on it before I decided it was a bad fucking idea to even try. Just because I had seen other people use it. I'm like, yeah, they're losing a lot of weight, but one, you can't fucking train because you're just exhausted because, you know, they're just lethargic and they're exhausted. They're sweating continuously. And like you said, yellow, dude, their fucking eyes look like gold coins. They're so fucking yellow.
It's everything. It's Here comes yellow. It's
Right.
like it's freaky. So it's like everything's yellow. Your skin's yellow. Your fingernails are
I'm like,
yellow.
no, I don't need to put anything in that's going to make me yellow.
And it stains the clothes. It's like white and spread through it. You can't wash it out.
I noticed that.
Industrial textile used to make sheets and other things in China yellow.
Yeah.
That's what it's used for.
So
talked a lot about something that we tell people not to use.
Yeah, good. So, well, my thing with that is that I think we have to go into it a little bit more and talk about it, because we got to give them all the warning signs on it, because it's like, we're not just talking about this stuff to talk about this. 99% of the stuff we're talking is from experience. Yeah, you have a medical background, you have a biochemistry background where you actually know what you're talking about from that. But a lot of this other shit is anecdotal. We've actually tried some of this stuff, or we've know people that have tried it. We've seen it first fucking hand. We've seen what DNP does. Do you know what DNP does firsthand? We know what clenbuterol does. I've seen people fuck themselves up to where now they're walking around with fucking asthma because, too much clen. I've seen people women especially, that abuse T3 and clen together, and they blow up 60 fucking pounds after a show.
Like, let me give you an example.
And they fuck up their metabolism.
Most doctors do not use the drugs they prescribe.
No.
To me, that's unethical. I don't just turn people out with vitamin V, aka Vicodin, and be like, take it as needed. It'll be fine. No, because what happens is the fuckers come back into the ER, and they're like, oh, I'm in so much pain, I don't know what's wrong. And they hide the fact that they just had abdominal surgery. They had their intestines ripped out, cut up into smaller pieces and stuffed back in, and their guts are sewed shut.
Right.
And then they're like, blah, 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 I'm taking my Vicodin. And you look in their container, and you're like, this thing's full. They're like, yeah, I've been taking it. I'm like, it's been 4 days. You're supposed to take 3 a day. There's not 12 missing. And they're like, why? Like, you're not taking it. They're like, well, it says as needed. It's like, I didn't write as fucking needed. The pharmacist did. What the fuck does he know? It's like, the point is what these doctors don't realize is if you stop taking Vicodin, then after a while what happens is the pain comes back. But you've built up a temporary tolerance to the opiate effect of the Vicodin.
Right.
And so it doesn't go away just because you take another pain pill. That's why they stuck the acetaminophen in with it, which is actually the toxic part of the liver. What they also don't tell the patients is if you chew it up and stick it under your tongue, it's going to make it work faster. What they also don't tell the patients, if you brush your teeth and create micro tears inside the gums, then stick it under your tongue. It'll work better. What they also don't tell the patients is to get rid of the bitter taste, sip water. The water will taste sweet. What they also don't tell the patients is if you take it on an empty stomach, you're going to get nauseous. And to treat the nausea, you stick your face in cold water and rub the backs of your temples where your chemotactic trigger zone is. And that'll trick your body into thinking that you're not nauseous anymore.
Right.
Because they don't do the drugs, they don't know how to prescribe the drugs to give people useful instruction. And hence, this is the case with the HRT clinics.
Right.
Because none of these motherfuckers do the drugs. So they can't tell people effective, useful strategies on how to use them,
Nope.
get the effect of them, and to avoid the side effects of them.
Nope. They can't tell you that.
When you audience listen, and you're like, oh, this guy's fucking nuts. He's not professional like a real doctor. It's like when you know your shit so well, it offends those who don't, then they work as a unit to push you out of their little circle. When you've got black wool and everyone else has white wool, then you might as well shape it to look like a wolf's fangs, scare the fuck out of everyone and scatter them to the wind. Because it's fun to watch them into the darkness where the real wolves are. So when I know how to use these drugs, it's like he said, it's from knowing the biochemistry of it, knowing the pharmacological engineering as an industrial aspect. It's from knowing how to diagnose and treat diseases with the drugs. And it's because I find it unethical to not try it out. It's like, what's this do? Oh, God, I'm going to throw up and I can see aliens coming out of my butthole. That's not, you have to know how these drugs are going to affect you.
Right.
So a hallucination of a green man coming out of the wall doesn't actually happen like the movies. Hallucinations are more like the walls are melting or the cat looks like it's got a longer snout. It's distorted perceptions with certain things.
Right.
And it's because of this, you know that a hallucination is really very similar to a migraine headache because it's a serotonin surge rippling from one cortex into the other area. So you're getting an amygdala emotional effect before you start getting parietal lobe visual disturbances from tactile, olfactory, or occipital or visual effect. So emotional changes and distorted in your logic and perceptions of feelings are going to happen before you get the aura of a migraine or the actual pain of a migraine. And that's from blood flow and sequestering of the blood in certain pockets of the brain.
Right.
And none of these guys use their own anti-seizure medication to know that it's the same thing as something that would be good to decrease an hallucination from a drug overdose. Because they don't take it that seriously. It's merely checking the box that the insurance company sets for you to do and covering your ass as you do it.
Unfortunately, Todd, the medical field has become not trying to cure any fucking diseases. We're just going to treat them. And
Right.
the treatment basically is keep coming back and keep paying your money for it, and we're going to keep prescribing you this medication, and we're going to keep doing this, but we're not going to have a fucking clue what we're doing with it. We're going to have a fucking clue how it actually affects you until we get a negative effect. Oh, that's affecting you this way? Well, then let me prescribe you this. But again, you're coming back. They're basically like any other drug dealer. They're just making money on the comeback. That's what they're doing. They're not actually curing any fucking diseases. They're not helping you at all.
No.
They're just treating what it is you say you have wrong with you. So for an HRT clinic, I have low testosterone. Oh, here's 200 milligrams of testipinate. Go ahead and inject this in your ass once a week. They can't tell you that it's better to shoot it twice. 100 one day, and then 3 days later, another 100 milligrams. They can't tell you that it's better to do that every 3 days. They can't tell you that...
Or the estrogen.
Right. They can't tell you that you need to make sure that your diet is in check, and then this is what you should be eating, and this you should be exercising. And they can't tell you that, hey, if you have this issue, you need to come back because we need to do blood work. They don't do the blood work quick enough because they don't give a fuck about you. Right. So they really don't care what the blood work says. They're going to, like you said last week, they'll have some fucking nurse read it off to you as opposed to reading it off themselves. Because quite honestly, they probably don't know how to fucking read it themselves anyway.
Or email it. They could at least email it to you to look at it rather than have a woman who has no education in blood work whatsoever
read off some fucking numbers.
This is high. This is low. This is high. It's like, bitch, you could have fucking taken a picture with your cell phone and sent it to me, and I could see in the column the H and the L and the H and the L.
Right. And read the little fucking dots. And then the thing is, too, if anybody's ever watched the movie Bigger, Faster, Stronger, they show a guy who's a doctor in there who's doing growth hormone therapy for a guy, and he goes in and he pays his fucking money, and he just shows him his little chart, and he goes, you see, you're a little low here. And we're gonna want to bring these levels up. Low on what? What the fuck am I low on? What are you bringing up? And how are you planning on doing that? And all he does, he just fucking prescribes him some human growth hormone and says, here you go. No instructions on it. This is just, just inject this in a couple times a day and this amount. And then we'll come back in 6 months and we'll have you do some more fucking blood work for us. And we're going to take a month to get your blood work. But in the meantime, you feel like shit. Or it's costing you an arm and a fucking leg because you're taking way more than you fucking need to because that's how much I prescribed you in the meantime.
It's so bad. And it's like, I never hear it different. That
every
day people hire me just to second check what their doctor's doing and as a second opinion. And it's just like, holy shit, this guy's got no fucking clue what's going on.
Well, the problem is that they're putting regulations.
Steroids in spray for your rhinitis and runny nose. And he's giving you Cialis for your penis not working. But he doesn't realize he's giving you such a low testosterone. He's shut off your natural production. Right. And if he gives you that much Cialis, it's going to cause the erectile tissue in your sinuses and nose to swell. So you're going to get a runny nose. Then he's prescribing you cortisol spray in your nose. That's an anti-steroid.
Right.
So the amount of cortisol you're spraying in your nose is canceling out the amount you're shooting in your ass.
Yep.
That the entire fucking system is retarded. And this is the same guy in Birmingham who's charging fucking $900 every 3 months. No fucking idea what he's doing. He's just because he's in a really rich neighborhood and spends a lot of money on his fucking countertop being granite marble and probably has a very pretty girl behind the front counter that looks like a model, people think this guy's successful. He must be smart. No,
Right.
he's good at business, bitch.
Yeah.
If you're a good, honest person, you're going to be broke. This is America. Where have you been?
Right. Well, and like you said, but the problem is, and I see is that the regulations for this are being put on the wrong end. They're trying to put all the regulations on the wrong fucking things. They're regulating what can be sold and everything else when the fucking drugs are out there. People are going to get their hands on them. Why don't we regulate how it's actually prescribed and find more studies to regulate who's actually fucking doing it as opposed to just regulating the fucking drug and saying, well, this is going to be a controlled substance, but they're freely being allowed to interpret some of this stuff however they want, and as long as they're able to prescribe it, they're prescribing it for whatever the fuck they want to prescribe a lot of this stuff for.
Well, that's like psychiatry.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Whatever the drug rep is going to give you the BJ and the boat tickets for,
right,
is what you're going to prescribe. It's like, oh, you've got depression, here's some antipsychotics.
Right.
Oh, you've got bipolar disease, here's some antipsychotics. Oh, you're just ugly and no one likes you. Well, we don't have a drug for that, but I can't bill you, so we're going to say that you got bipolar, and we're going to give you some antipsychotics. Why the fuck's everyone on antipsychotics? Because it's a new class of antipsychotics that works on serotonin, norepinephrine, and it also works on other psycholytic and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. That the problem is that these people have real emotional problems, and they need to talk about their problems, but no one wants to listen to them because they're annoying.
Right.
So they're just going to throw drugs at them.
Right.
And there's no regulation in psychiatry at all.
Nothing.
None.
No, you're gonna come in because you have high anxiety and you have panic attacks all the time and you're fucking depressed. What we're gonna do is we're gonna give you every fucking antidepressant, anti-anxiety pill under the fucking counter. When one stops working, we're gonna give you another one, but we're gonna make you go cold turkey on the one you were just on, which is gonna cause you more and more fucking issues to the point where you fucking can't handle it anymore, end up hanging yourself. But what do we do to help you?
Yeah, or
we didn't do anything to help you. We actually made it worse.
I'm unhappy. Okay, you've got anxiety. Here's this drug, and here's an antidepressant that's going to make you fat. And it's like, well, if I'm fatter, isn't it going to make me more depressed?
Right.
Hey, wait, it makes me fat and gives me sexual dysfunction, so I'm going to get uglier and I can't put out.
Right. So I'm going to be so happy about that. But my serotonin levels in my brain are being regulated by this fucking pill that you're giving me. But it doesn't matter because I look at myself in the mirror and I fucking hate what I see.
Plus, it's not only that. If you just jack up a hormone, then your body's going to compensate, like we talked about earlier.
Yep.
It's like if you turn up the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, then the amount of postsynaptic receptors for serotonin are going to decrease because the pool of serotonin floating in the synaptic cavity is going to increase. The body will cancel it out, but your ass is still going to get bigger. And that's the part that they don't give a fuck about. And it's so dishonest. Yeah. And it's just, nobody's aware of this, and nobody's willing to stand up against these motherfuckers. It's really upsetting that there's no authority figure that actually looks out for the good of the people, that it's a capitalist, fascist culture that's been pretending to be a democracy. But nobody represents the people. It's not even a republic anymore.
Right.
It's just a board of directors.
And then you get, you've got these drugs out there available, and since there's no education and nobody really knows how to fucking use some of them, like we have issues where we've seen it firsthand where coaches are giving females fucking Novadex and it's eating away their breast tissue. So now you're giving them a fucking medication.
So it eats away at their breast tissue. So you'll just get in.
Well, but at the same time, though, in the meantime, though, what happens? They start having more body image. You have a girl that already had body image issues to begin with. She's competing because it makes her feel better about herself, right? So we're supposed to be promoting people feeling better about themselves. And now we give them breast cancer medication, which eats away at their breast tissue. So guess what? They don't have any boobs. So are they supposed to feel better about themselves after the show is over? To me, it seems like in the way of not only the medical community, but in the community as far as fitness world, we've got people that aren't looking out for the best interests of those that they're working with. And to me, it bothers me because you have a lot of people that are getting fucked up by something that's very, very serious matter when we're talking anabolics. So I think that's really honestly the reason why we're doing this show. We're doing these things is because I know Todd wants the same thing. We want to make sure that people are doing things correctly and they're not hurting themselves. So I guess that's all I got for tonight. So we're going to cut it short here. We're having some technical difficulties. Like I said, we had to do this impromptu tonight. This wasn't really what we were going to do as far as a show, but I wanted to give you guys the best show that I possibly could. So we just basically piggybacked what we talked about last week into this week. So for Todd Lee, I'm Keith Fabbri saying this has been the Weekly Grind Podcast, Anabolic U, Episode 2, Episode 7 overall. And we will see you guys next week. Keep grinding.